On the bench is a PSP 1000. I'm going to take you through a couple of modifications to make this thing usable in 2024. One thing I wanted to cover in the video was a new battery, but that's not going to happen. The battery that I chose didn't work. We also need to upgrade this USB port to something more usable like USB-C, and we're going to put it right here because we're never going to use this again, let's be honest. This PSP has already been soft modded. We changed the firmware to support SD card loading games and pretty much all content, ISOs and whatever, off of our SD card. Opening up the battery door. This is the battery that was in this when I got it. I don't know how old it is, but it only runs for about an hour and a half now. I've been into this PSP before. I was the first one to go into it. It used to have its stickers and tags, but it's been played. I had to clean up the UMD drive and clean up the pads on the board that read the memory sticks because it wasn't doing that before. Now it's been soft modded so that it will play all of our games off our card. We no longer need the UMD drive, though it does work perfectly. I'm going to save it. I may find one with a bad Bluetooth module. Gonna have it capable of doing Bluetooth speakers. I got a set of 10 USB breakout ports for our USB-C connector. And IPS screen to replace the old one in there. They sent me these terrible instructions. Probably be fine if the photocopier wasn't so dark. It's just black. It's just so, like, how am I supposed to tell which trace is? The arrow is shit too. Good thing there's YouTube. Right, guy?
I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a clip. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a clip. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a clip. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to.
Here's my motherboard with all my fancy chips. These, I guess, are heat spreaders for those. They get hot. I imagine they get hot. Alright, back to it. We have got to get to that board. That's where the audio components are. Stick that aside.
I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click. I'ma have to bust. I'ma have to bust a click.
Alright, so we lifted this guy up. We accidentally pulled this antenna out, but we're basically taking out this thing right here. Get this little heat shrink off the edges and use those wires to attach our power to this. Now we can fit our USB-C into our case. So I'm going to route the wires under the button here with the other power wires. I went over the board, and we're going to connect those to the USB pins on the motherboard so that we can get USB data as well as power. This is the back of the Bluetooth module. As you can see, we have a 5-volt positive, a power ground, a couple of pins for serial that we won't be using. That's our audio left and right, our audio ground, and a couple more digital input pins that we'll also not need. We got the one that already has an LED and a pairing button on the surface. So we won't need to add those per the circuit, because they've already been included. We're also going to leave that antenna on there. There is a U.FL port so that we can extend our antenna, but this one worked fine for the short range we need. Per our diagram, we just need to connect our left and right inputs, our audio ground, our 5-volt positive, and our power ground. Everything else, like the LED and the connect switch, are already included on our module. It's not listed anywhere on the actual item description, and this is pretty typical, that they have several modules that are similar in function and identical in pinout that may or may not include certain features, so check closely before you buy. To avoid the typical issue of having to plug a dummy jack into the console to use the Bluetooth, we are actually going to hijack the switch that's inside our female 3.5 millimeter jack. We're going to do that by, as you see here, I've removed or separated that pin, the left audio pin coming out of the jack on the far side, from the board. That's pad there, and I've connected a wire to each side, one to the board and one to the jack. I've dropped the motherboard back in, and the red and green wires that you see are the data plus and minus wires that go to the serial pins on the USB drive. I've connected them to the pins of the original USB-C or USB mini port where it was, and you can see it's an ugly job, but it's connected now. Our ground wire can be any ground in the system. I've just used the ground shield. And for 12-volt positive, you'll have to check your motherboard revision for where to find one. This was the easiest one to get to in mine, motherboard revision 3. And it's just 5 volts power when this console is switched on. And there are the 5 wires that we actually need connected to our module on those 5 pins that I pointed out in the diagram. Next, I replaced the display. That's a pretty simple process. I won't take you through it. You can find it all over YouTube. But just confirmed that everything was working before we closed the front of the console back up. 1, 2, skip a few. Now kind of skip forward to where we have removed the UMD drive completely, reassembled, done the IPS mod. There's nothing to look at there. You bridge 2 solder points, you put the new screen in, it all clips into place. The board for the battery was removed from the battery so that the leads are bare, and I can connect a bigger battery to fit somewhere in this space, which is now empty, except for the Bluetooth transmitter. I put it in there with a switch inside the door. Activate, deactivate Bluetooth. It occurred to me whenever I was editing this that I didn't give any explanation about how the switch was supposed to work. So here's how it works. Our audio jack has a built-in disconnect. When you pop a headphone jack into it, it actually breaks the connection between the left audio channel going into it and this other pad that it connects to on the other side, directly across from it. That is what tells the PlayStation to mute the internal speakers. Now, you can do this by plugging a dummy jack into there. It'll break the connection. It won't actually output any audio to anything because it's just got wires cut off of it. But we got to have a more elegant solution than that. So what I've done is I've actually separated this pin where it comes out of the jack from the pad on the board and connected a wire to either side. We're going to use one of our throws of our switch. This is a double position, double throw switch. These are very common. Essentially, this is the internal diagram of the switch and how it operates. is in one position, it bridges 2 contacts on this side, 2 contacts on this side, and then the other positions, imagine this whole centerpiece slides downward. It'll bridge this contact to this contact and this contact to this contact. And I've drawn it a little funny. It doesn't actually bridge in between these. These are 2 separate throws with 2 separate positions, hence the DPDT. And I may have that in the wrong order, but that's essentially what it is. So what we want it to do when we press our switch is we want it to break the connection between these pins, the same way that our headphone jack would when it was inserted, but leave them connected in their normal way whenever it's not pressed. The same way would be if our headphone were not inserted. So we do this by taking those 2 wires that I connected there and putting them in the normally closed position of the switch by connecting to those 2 pins. Now you notice on the other side where we're switching our power on and off, we're doing the opposite. We don't want power to come on unless we flip that switch on. So that other throw over there is doing nothing when it's in its normal position, its resting position. And then when it's flipped into the other position, it will bridge contact between our 5-volt positive coming from our motherboard and our 5-volt positive that our Bluetooth transmitter requires. These other pins will connect exactly like they normally would. This regular left audio pin are also, well, I think I took it right off of here because it's pretty much the same, but you take your left audio pin, you run it to your left audio pin on your Bluetooth transmitter, right audio, and ground to ground. So you'll have 3 wires coming from here, going to the 3 pins for your audio input on your transmitter. The other 2 wires on the side where you've separated those leads are going to run over to our switch and doing the normally closed position on one side of our switch. These are what you call syncopated. And this is really how you avoid using the dummy jack to flip your Bluetooth. In this configuration, when you press that switch, you will mute the console the same way it would as if you were plugging a headphone jack into it, and our audio and power are all routed now to our Bluetooth transmitter so that it can do its job. I put my Bluetooth buddy inside the door with the power switch for the Bluetooth, and I put some hot glue on the connectors and some foam tape to stick them down. All right, here's that boy, completed, put back together, reassembled, all of our guts swapped around. You really can't see much difference on the surface. It's got some smudges there. You can see now that we have a USB-C port where our original charging port used to be. I'm going to put a little black foam tape around that connector just to keep dust and moisture out of there. But it sits in without any interruption to the actual exterior case, and that's what I was going for. It got into the battery tray a little bit, and we were able to compensate for that by moving the actual cell, a piece of that foam tape, by moving the cell for the battery inside here. And I'll have a bigger one. I've got it ordered, but the one that I had intended to stick in there was way too big, and so it didn't make it. But all of that tucks in the same place that it was in before, and that just closes up like normal. The biggest difference that we're going to find is inside the UMD tray. There's no UMD drive in here. You can see our Bluetooth module. You can see our switch for turning our Bluetooth on and off. The console's not powered up, and so that 5-volt pin that we got power from is also not powered. So even if I turn this on now or leave it on, while the console's off, it's not going to cause any problems because it doesn't use any power. It doesn't actually get any. I kept the module where I could access it. 2 reasons. One, the antenna is a little small PCB antenna, and I want to make sure it has the best fighting chance it can. So I didn't want to hide it underneath the battery cell or down too close to the original Wi-Fi antenna, which is also 2.4 gigahertz, could cause interference. I'll put it right in here. And the other reason is because the pairing button for that module is right there on the board. So I can reach it with my finger just by reaching in there just as easily as I can do this. Back when we were modding PSPs in the early 2000s, when there were a relevant console still, we would commonly do this. Like as soon as we found the ability to soft mod these PlayStations and get our games downloaded or get our games onto a disc and didn't need the UMDs, we did all kind of things in here. We put FM transmitters in here. This is pre-Bluetooth, mind you. Bluetooth was around, but it was infancy, and we didn't have convenient $5 modules that we could drop into our electronics to utilize it. So we had FM transmitters. I remember having a cradle for my PSP 3000 in the dash of my pickup truck, and I used it as a primary media player for my vehicle for probably the better part of a year, and probably until I crashed that truck. But really useful now to have Bluetooth. We could do the same thing. I could pair this to a modern car stereo if we needed to, and use the same thing. I don't think they make the old car docks for PlayStation portables. There was a time when you could just get a car dock that would slip into your dash somewhere, and then this would set in it, and it was convenient controls. Nowadays, we have touch controls directly on our car stereos. There's no real point in doing that, but this will allow us anyway to now use modern Bluetooth headphones. Probably not true wireless. I don't know what the actual Bluetooth support version is on this module. I can check into it. We may not be able to do completely wireless buds. I'll let you know. But we can connect an external speaker if we want a little more high fidelity audio than what the speakers inside the console can provide. But we're not going to use that all the time, so it just stays tucked away inside there. We power our machine on. We can go into our memory stick under our games menu. I like the classic menu. I like it in green. This is the way I had it back in the day. And here we have a collection of translated Japanese games and just about any JRPGs that I wanted to catch up on the console. The biggest benefit of this is now something we couldn't do before. I can now conveniently plug in the same cable I use for my phones and my headphones and everything else into the bottom of this console, where we get a charging light. And because we connected the breakout for that into the USB port, just paralleled into the USB port here, we can also transfer data on and off of the console directly onto our card. Not the fastest speed because, the interface on this is old, but we can now transfer data as well over the same cable. And also, there's the Bluetooth mod. I took a time of pairing this off camera, but I'm going to turn on a little Bluetooth speaker here. Should be able to open up our door, turn on our Bluetooth device. You notice that it muted the audio, flashes a couple of times. It's looking for a device to connect to. That chime. And now our audio is playing in wonderful full audio. It just sounds so much better through pretty much anything other than what's in here. Fun game if you've never run around and play it. Fun note, if you left your Wi-Fi intact, these devices will still ad hoc to other PlayStation portables. So you can still play multiplayer on all these games if they support ad hoc between consoles without any special cables, exactly the way you could back in 2005. And one last thing, if we open this up now, we can just turn that off. You'll see that it cut power there. It immediately shifted audio back to the console, and we can just carry it away. Thanks for watching.